it's going, is this a good way or do you want it to be sideways? Okay. Because I know on phones it's probably easier for people to see it, but I don't know if you guys are like putting it on a... But I can see the whole slideshow, so that's... Okay, perfect.
Okay, we are about ready to get started. It is 5 minutes after. Our live stream is going strong. Again, for folks who haven't heard it, there is an overflow space at Paper Tone Records where they are streaming the live stream. So if folks get uncomfortable or can't see well enough in here, we invite you to go over there. You can always go between the two spaces. And again, please refrain from asking questions until the end. Write them down, put them on our parking lot, pass them up as you need to. Bathroom is right next door for folks who need it. And any other housekeeping notes? I think that should be good for now. Okay. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here, y'all. We really did not expect this to get this much attention. I know there were folks who were also not happy that this was scheduled during church time, but I don't know that we would have had space for folks who are currently in church, even if we had scheduled it at a different time. So I'm really glad that y'all are here, and I think I can speak on behalf of all of the event organizers when I say that we're really thrilled that so many folks are invested in what's happening in their own backyards and want to be a part of making collective decisions and participating in the democratic process. As a reminder, this is not being hosted by a formal organization or entity, and the folks who organized this teach-in space today are not elected officials, we are not politicians, we are not decision makers of any kind. Just like y'all, we are concerned community members that live and work in Canton and in Haywood County. We are not being paid, we are all volunteers, and we all came together because we want our neighbor to have a say in what happens here in our community. So to get us started, if any of the other organizers want to say your name or introduce yourselves, you're more than welcome to. Athena, if you want to say anything.
Hi, I'm Athena, and I am live streaming this so then people can see it. And surprisingly, I have had people from across the state and even across the entire United States that are watching this right now.
Amazing. Thanks, Athena.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Carolyn, do you want to say anything?
I just live here and I'm concerned, so I'm really glad that this materialized.
Carolyn. Wow, do you want to say anything?
My name is Tom. I live in Bethel, and thank you for coming. Just like you, I just care about our community.
Ben is not in the room right now. Tia, do you want to say anything on Ben's behalf?
No, just thank you for being here and for caring about Canton.
Awesome. Ben and Tia are with Paper Town Records, so I'm super grateful to them for providing the baked goods and also the overflow space. And then Sarah, do you want to say anything?
I'm gonna try.
Thanks, Sarah. Sarah's with the High House Commons and provided the space for us today, so huge shout out to Sarah. Thank you so much. Paper Town Coffee provided the coffee today, and then our friend Mims with Haywood County Pride is also supporting with child care, so if any parents need a break so that you can focus. Super grateful to y'all. And then my name is Chelsea, and I live in Waynesville, and I am just grateful to be here. So, okay, that brings us to the good stuff. All right, so what to expect today. Real quick, we are setting expectations of where we're at now. We just got started and did quick intros. We're going to go over the local 101. So like what's going on at the mill, what's going on at the public hearing. Then we're going to go over data centers 101. What are they? What's the big deal? Then we're going to go into a little bit of a brainstorming session together because I think the most important thing is that we are collectively creating the future of the paper mill, not just fighting against what we don't want to see at the paper mill. And then we'll talk about some possible intervention points besides the upcoming public hearing, and then we'll close out by answering any questions that still remain and talking about next steps. So before we jump into the local 101, some expectation settings. One, why are we here? What's the point of this gathering? We are not here to debate. That is not the point of this gathering. We are here to share information between each other about important decisions that are being made regarding the redevelopment of the old paper mill and how the decision-making process works. We are here to share fundamental research, anecdotes, and other information about data center development and the resulting impact that it has economically, environmentally, and otherwise. And then we are here to nurture a collective vision of alternatives for a just transition of that property to be revitalized into a space that really serves our interests. So that is why we are here. Again, no debating, please. Possible outcomes I hope folks will walk away with today. I hope you walk away with a basic understanding of the possible spectrum of impacts that data center development could have on our community. I hope you walk away with an understanding of the current decision-making process surrounding the development plans for the old paper mill and the upcoming public hearing on Wednesday. And then I hope that you walk away with some resources and information to support further autonomous engagement on your own terms, on your own time, in the collective decision-making process. Again, expectation for questions, please write them down, add them to the parking lot, or hold them to the end, because chances are we might answer most of them as we go through this before you even ask them. So. Okay. All right, so Local 101, where are we? How did we get here? Tom, do you want to say a little bit about this?
Okay, so what has been planned for the mill site so far is the question, and the answer is we know very little so far. This has been in discussion for over a year now with the owner of the mill, Eric Spiritus. Eric still has to work through a number of issues regarding the mill site, such as the amount of contamination that's there and where it's located and all that. So information about plans is very sparse and slow to come by. Nothing has been formally proposed for this mill site in terms of a data center, but it's possible. And that's why we're here, because the owner of this site is marketing this mill, and he's including data centers as a possible use for that site. So that's why we're here. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. And just as a couple examples, the site is marketed on LinkedIn and the data center is mentioned there. Perhaps more importantly is Eric Spiritus did present to the Chamber of Commerce a year ago, and they did discuss the possibility of a data center at that meeting. So we know this is on the radar, and now we're going to take it from there.
Yep. And just for folks who can't see the slides, what this says is, according to Spiritus' LinkedIn, a quote from his LinkedIn says, Two Bigs Development LLC was established by Spiritus Worldwide to acquire and repurpose the former Canton paper mill. The company is dedicated to redeveloping over 200 acres of prime property into a dynamic mix of residential, commercial, and industrial spaces. Key features include heavy industrial power for data centers. So last March, Spiritus told a Chamber of Commerce audience that a data center is possible, and according to the Mountaineer, Spiritus said, quote, the large quantity of energy available from both natural gas and electricity could be ideal for data centers needed to power the burgeoning artificial intelligence sector. So these are the two things that we know have been said about the possibility of a data center being constructed. However, there's nothing in writing that says it's definitely a proposal. So what regulations are currently in place here locally? Both Haywood County and the town of Waynesville acted preemptively back in 2023. Vicki Hyatt actually did a great article kind of digging into these regulations and the possibility of a data center in Spiritus history. And in 2023, the town of Waynesville expanded their prohibited land uses within town limits to include a specific category for cryptocurrency mines and data centers. So they're saying this is a prohibited use of our land, cryptocurrency and data mines. Haywood County passed an ordinance that restricts water use, introduces setbacks, land use, and energy use for new industrial facilities, and it requires permitting for any industries exceeding the ordinance's limits. So this is really good because when it requires permitting, that means that there is more public oversight into the permitting process. Right now, for Canton, of course, there are no regulations or limits in place for this. And that is why the town decided to hold the public hearing on the 11th to introduce a possible moratorium. So what is important to know about a moratorium is that that's a fancy word for a pause, okay? So a pause that would allow the town of Canton to do further research, to look at other types of legislation that other towns have used, etc., to figure out what more long-term sustained regulations and limits they may put in place. A moratorium itself is not a ban, it is not a regulation, okay? And what this means is that the conversation will and should continue after the public hearing on Wednesday, even if and when they do pass a moratorium on data centers. The other thing I'll say about this is, according to Mayor Zeb Smathers, this hearing comes in response to concerns from people in Canton and Haywood County. Although Blue Ridge Public Radio also reported that the hearing was prompted by repeated inquiries from tech companies about using the Old Mill site for this purpose. Mayor Smathers has also voiced concern about the possible consequences caused by data center facilities. Keep in mind, just as much as the people here are going to be lobbying and showing up and voicing our desires to our elected officials, Spiritus and all the corporate entities out there are going to be doing the exact same thing and probably paying people to do it way more often than we are able to, okay? So, Data Centers 101. What is a data center? The University of Michigan explains that data centers are specialized facilities designed to house and manage IT infrastructure. Things like computing servers, the cloud, when you save your pictures or your information or stuff to the Google Drive, the cloud, etc. Networking equipment, other hardware essential for our modern digital services. So when you're using not just AI, but the internet, right? And that's the thing too, is that data centers are not necessarily a new phenomenon, but with everyday life incorporating increasingly complex technology and the rapid expansion of generative AI and similar tools, data centers have needed to expand their presence dramatically and exponentially in order to accommodate the increased demand on the infrastructure, right? Data centers the other thing to know about data centers is that they rely on really advanced cooling systems, backup power, in-house cybersecurity measures, etc. And so basically think of, like, you know how when we all used desktops back in the day, they were like this brick with a bunch of wires and like fancy little sticks and stuff sitting inside of them? A data center is like a massive industrial complex. That is what that computer desktop thing used to be. So a bunch of wires and a bunch of sticks and a bunch of technology stuff. This means it requires 24/7 power, right? It can never be turned off. It also means it requires very minimal human engagement in order to sustain the facility. So we'll talk about job creation later, but it doesn't exactly require a bunch of us to run the place. So a couple of facts and fiction points that we want to talk about for data centers. I mentioned that the demand on infrastructure has caused a rapid expansion of data centers. The expansion of data centers and similar facilities is happening on every scale, so the global scale all the way down to the local scale. Amazon, Microsoft, and Google plan to increase the number of data centers they operate by 78%, building on every single continent except for Antarctica. The United States already has by far the most, around 5,400 data centers out of a total of about 11,000. So around half of the world's entire collection of data centers already in the United States of America. And North Carolina is home to at least 100 of those already. And there are multiple major expansions planned in the coming years for areas like Kingsborough, Hickory. I've got a friend over in Lenore who's dealing with this, Statesville, possibly High Point, and a lot of other places. So just because we are in little small town Canton does not mean that we are safe from this. Okay, so a little game for you. Fact or fiction? If you think this statement is a fact, raise your hand, normal. If you think it's a fiction, then raise a closed fist. The statement is, the massive energy demands from data centers hike up energy costs for everyday consumers. Fact or fiction? Yeah, y'all already know this stuff. Why are you even here? I'm not giving you guys. So, data centers are extreme energy consumers. Like I said, they require 24 hours, 7 days a week energy. Data centers already account for a significant and rapidly growing share of the United States electricity demand, with utility infrastructure struggling to keep up more often than not. To meet these demands, power companies are resorting to fossil fuels that they were trying to taper out, right? They are postponing coal plant closings, they are drilling new gas wells, they are investing in nuclear energy, even reopening 3 Mile Island for folks who are familiar. And while corporations and big tech are raking in profits off of the AI industry, it's communities like ours that are actually paying the price. So as demand surges, utility companies like Duke Energy often pass the cost on to residents and small businesses through higher rates. And without laws, again, these regulations and limits that we have to make sure are put in place, without those in place, then electricity bills are projected to rise by 8% nationally and as much as 25% in some regions by 2030. And I know, Tom, you had some stuff about Duke Energy. I didn't know. You wanted to share that now.
Oh, sure. So, and if we think that we're gonna get help from the state government on this, we're probably not. If the last 3 years is any indication, our Public Service Commission has approved every request Duke Energy has issued for raising our rates. Right now, our rates are going up, and according to Carolina Forward, if you're paying $140 for a monthly electricity bill in 2023, that's projected to go up to over $190 in the next 4 years. And that's without any more data centers being built. So but the upshot is, if we don't do something, the electricity bills are going to keep going up, and it's driven by these data centers in the large part.
Thanks, Tom. Okay. So our second question in our game, again, open hand fact, closed hand fiction. Fact or fiction? Data centers require massive amounts of fresh water to operate. Yep, see, again, y'all could be teaching this. Only clean water can be used by data centers. So for folks who don't know, the water in data centers is used for the cooling process, cooling the equipment. So what happens is the cool water is run through pipes, so that way it can cool down all of that computer equipment in there, and then as the water is hitting the heat, what happens? It evaporates, right? So it is not actually getting returned to the water basin. This is really important because the paper mill did use more water per diem than a data center would use per diem. But there are differences in how the water is used. When the paper mill used water, it was used for the production of the paper. And so the water would get all of that chemicals, et cetera, in it, but it would go into the wastewater treatment process. It would be treated and recycled for later use. Because of this, the paper mill actually took on the municipal wastewater treatment for the town. So in addition to treating their own water, they were treating all of the municipal water at no cost to the town. So that was a huge reciprocal exchange in place there, right? With a data center, 80% of that water would not be able to be recycled. What is able to be recycled would be sent to the municipal wastewater treatment facility, which now the town is currently paying $140,000 to Spiritus to maintain while the town constructs a new facility for that purpose. and the town has already had to increase utility rates for the folks here in Canton for that exact reason. So this is really important to consider. In places like Maricopa County, Arizona, where they already have more intense struggles with droughts regularly, less freshwater access, there's a data center hub with facilities owned by Meta, Microsoft, and Google. Drought conditions became so extreme that the state has actually revoked construction permits for new homes due to lack of groundwater. So any water-consuming facility that goes into that space, in my opinion, needs to have equal or better agreements in place than the paper mill had on behalf of the people of Canton. Okay, our third question in our round of fact or fiction. Despite everything that we've said here, all of these harms, data centers actually bring lucrative economic opportunities to communities through job creation and tax revenue. All fists in the room. You are correct, that is fiction. Data centers create very few permanent jobs. Most of the jobs that are created for data centers are actually temporary construction jobs during the development of the center. 16 out of 36 states that offer data center subsidies currently don't even require job creation in exchange for those subsidies. The ones that do require job creation require a very small number of permanent jobs to be created. Only one permanent job is created for every $1.95 million that is spent on data center tax subsidies. New Jersey requires 100 jobs, but all of the remaining states that require any job creation require 50 or less per project. And as a reminder, the paper mill had around 1,000 people on the employment rolls at the time that it closed. So, a fraction. Okay, last thing that we have for our fact or fiction section is on property values. Do data centers harm or help your property value? They, in some cases, may strengthen municipal budgets, but according to this article in House Digest, for property owners, their presence is more of a burden. Large-scale data centers don't just alter the local tax base, but they also quickly change the character of an area. Data centers are significantly driving up costs for local residents, which means that even if you can't visibly see the center from your dream house, there is still a hefty price to pay for living near one. And even if your property value does increase, usually it is not in favor of the local community, and it ends up pushing out the folks who currently live in the community for big corporate investors. The last thing that I will say on this point is that data center operators frequently hide the details of their plans as trade secrets, or they move very quickly and in secret and in quiet. So, for example, out on Dale Earnhardt's old land, there's a huge battle between the family right now because the widow is trying to sell off the land to a data center developer, and Carrie Earnhardt, one of his sons, is battling with her. But similar to how I like to think about it as like the coal barons back in the day, right? Like they would use very sneaky tactics to buy private property from folks or to undermine the control of local communities in order to get basically free reign over wherever they saw the extractable revenue being. Do you want to say anything else about the secret ways they go about this, Tom?
Well, yeah, one of the important things is if a data center developer takes this kind of quiet approach, they're likely to ask local officials to sign non-disclosure agreements to protect their trade secrets, but of course also to obscure what they're doing from us. So we just want to be vigilant that our elected officials are restrained from signing agreements like that, NDAs, as they call them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I just add one point to that? Whatever power consumption, whatever water consumption, and whatever noise the data center operates at on day one. It will increase exponentially as they build in more processing power, more storage, kicking up higher energy consumption, kicking up higher heat and more water use. So from day one, it will exceed what they said was the day one operation, and it'll keep on going.
And to add on to that, I've heard that ideally the goal is to get lodged into a place and then expand to more data centers in that area.
Yeah,
So-
that's definitely what's happened in places like Catawba County, Hickory, Lenore. It basically started with like 1 or 2 data centers, and then now out in Catawba, they're looking at like one of the biggest meta data centers to be constructed that is like on the docket for an expansion. So before we move into some imagining, we actually moved through this a lot quicker than I expected us to. I know that there's no questions on the parking lot just yet, but let's take like a 10-minute question break. So we'll raise some hands. I see one in the red jacket here. We'll start with you.
Can anyone just speak more to the noise? What kind of noise, what that looks like, comparable to no one's?
Do you want to speak to that? Is that what you're raising your hand for?
Yeah, if they don't use water, they have to use fans, and the fans can be really, really loud. There's a data center out in Cherokee that is incredibly loud. The Washington Post has written some articles about it, so you can check it out there. And it should be said that one example of a good moratorium that doesn't just cover crypto would be Clay County.
Okay, great. Thank you. Clay County. I saw the hand back there in the middle.
Yeah, I also want to say, also with the noise and using the water, we look to our friends over in Memphis, Tennessee, where all the health issues that are popping up with people, respiratory problems and all those other things, and also, it's dirtying the water as well to what they're doing. So there's more environmental issues that are also going to go with it, as well as all the, the irritating things like our electric bills going up and the noise. But we also got to be considerate of all the output of things that they're putting out into the air and things like that that are going into our lands and stuff like that,
Absolutely. That's such an important point. And we didn't put this in our presentation today, but we did, it came up in a couple of conversations as we were prepping, which is like, the paper mill already has a very notorious history for environmental hoopla. So, at one point, the literal state of Tennessee had to sue the state of North Carolina over our paper mill polluting the Pigeon River and it going downstream into Tennessee. So we don't necessarily want to move backwards in that regard. Vicky, I see your hand.
I just had one of the point of interest. I was writing all the stories when the high impact ordinance was actually formulated and passed for Haywood County. And at the time I editorialized against, there are giant loopholes there. It has nothing for noise. They said we can't regulate noise, which I don't see why. And it also has no provision for public hearings. Yes, you have to have a permit, but why not have a public hearing provision at the minimum? And the third thing, it protects vulnerable populations, which are schools, which are daycare centers, which are churches, places that you couldn't evacuate because high impact includes chemical plants and landfills and a bunch of other stuff. But the one thing it doesn't protect, and it would help anyone here who's interested in farmland preservation, is if we protected agriculture districts. And we had 1,000-foot separation from any agriculture district, and any farmer in the county can voluntarily put their land in an agriculture district. And at that point, they would have the protection if we could get agriculture districts in the ordinance.
That's a great point. Dr. Wallace, I your hand.
Well, I just wanted to ask a question. I read that a typical large data center takes about 5 million gallons of water per day, I think, which is equivalent of a town of 50,000 people. What is the flow in the Pigeon River? Does anybody know like the average flow of the Pigeon? And one other thing, in the 1980s, there was a plan to take all the nuclear residue from the Aiken, South Carolina nuclear plant and put it up in Leicester. And there was a big campaign in Canton and in Tennessee also, and in Buckingham County, to stop that, and it worked. So just be optimistic, because that was a big deal.
Yes, yes.
One thing I will say real fast is to speak to the water flow of the Pigeon. I don't know that flow, but I know friends that worked at the mill, and they said that one of the reasons the mill closed down was because there wasn't enough water to actually keep it going, and that could be an issue for data centers in general.
Great point. I saw pink hair.
Yeah, so I'm from Buncombe County, and I'm just curious, like, what folks that aren't in Haywood County can do to support. Like, I know we can't, like, sign petitions and stuff because we don't live here. I know showing up is important, but what can we do to help and support y'all?
That is a great question. We are gonna talk about some points of intervention at a later point, but I think like, keeping your ear to the ground too, because we as locals will call on y'all at any point if it does feel like we urgently need solidarity and support in this fight. I think we're in a good enough spot right now where we are like getting ahead of it. But I think just knowing that we can lean on our neighbors, because this isn't just one county issue, even though it is our town making the decision about this, this is clearly an issue that impacts the whole region. So, great point. Yes, ma'am.
What is the effect of not having a data center?
What is the effect of not having a data center? Well, I think that not having a data center leaves it's a blank canvas for us as a community, right? Not really what we're talking about right now is like if we prevent a data center so that we can use that property for something that is more conducive to meeting the community's needs and like serving our best interests. So I think I would even move backwards before the data center question, right? And say like, what do we need? What do we want as a community? Is a data center going to provide that? If not, what are the alternatives that would provide that? I saw your hand up for a while.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the thing that keeps coming up for me as a curiosity is that with the idea of this being planned here in the city, it is also though classically, or it's traditionally classified as private property now because of Spear just purchasing. So it's private land. So I guess the question I'm posing is that even though it is private land, at the bottom line, he can make the decision on how he sells and utilizes the property, but I know that there's an impact because of that, those properties being within the town limits. It's like the value of city limits. So then you get, as far as our elected officials, involved. So the question I guess that comes up for me is that, what is our ability as far as limitations as a city, if there are properties that are outside of the city limits? That still could potentially impact us because they will be drawing on our resources. So these are things I think about, like how exactly can we as citizens, as community people involved with our city? Do we go outside the city, get the county involved? Because then when you go outside of the city, the county can put on ordinance that have an impact of the whole county.
Yeah.
So anything that goes outside of the city limits and they try to bypass that, those things are things that could still impact us locally, but we don't have as much influence on that because of it being just a city and it's a county decision situation. Not to say that we can't go further, but these are the things that pop up with me in the situation because at the core, I guess the core of my question, sorry to ramble, is the idea that this is a private entity. It's private property that was purchased by an individual who has a company. And they can do a lot of things that can't be necessarily circumvented by the city. And these are things I'd like to think about as we're going forward with all of this.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one important thing to note that we also did not include in our presentation is that when Spear Trust purchased the property that the paper mill is on, that purchase actually included a total of 29 parcels, individual parcels. One of those parcels is the land on which Lake Logan sits. So that is not in the town of Canton, that is in Haywood County. However, this is a little bit of what Vicki was speaking to and a little bit of what I was speaking to with the other local regulations that are already in place. So Haywood County did pass that ordinance back in 2023, but it is super limited. It is not the most effective ordinance. As Vicki was just saying, there are setbacks in place, so they couldn't necessarily build a data center on top of a lake because there are setback regulations for like how close it can be to water, etc. But yeah, this is a really good point, and part of what, as we get to wrap up and talk about next steps, the moratorium itself and what happens in the town of Canton itself is not actually the end of the conversation. And this kind of touches on what our friend from Buncombe County was asking, because really it also goes beyond Haywood County too, right? And like we actually need the state of North Carolina to be regulating and limiting these. And we need to be thinking about like, is the state promising tax subsidies for these kinds of entities to try and bring them in, et cetera? Because that is where a lot of those like hooks and the bait are gonna come in for these economic developments. That then our local folks can only do so much to try and stave off. So it's a great point. That's why you're here.
So, that land is mixed use. The town put that zoning on it as soon as Spirit House closed on the land. No, I'm talking about the mill. So, in mixed use, it does allow for light industrial. Now, in many places, light industrial has covered data centers. Okay, but that's up to interpretation, and part of the moratorium could be that the town is going to look at the light industrial and whatever plans are for data centers and say, no, because of power consumption, because of water consumption, we will consider data centers as heavy industrial use, and it's zoned out. Now, with money and politics, you can change zoning.
Yeah.
Right, but there is another regulatory and very local and locally controlled in place that could be used to keep the data centers out.
Yeah, great point. That's how you're
Yeah, just a question about if we can say like, no, we don't want this. Maybe there's also a way to say, maybe there's a win-win. Are there examples of data centers anywhere on the globe that have taken community safety, health, water use? Is that a good way to build a data center? And can we say to Spiritas, if we can't stop it, then it has to follow these standards that are, that kind of make sure that we don't get that our electricity goes up, that we don't have health issues, and that it also that is small enough that other things can happen at the mill site.
I will say that this University of Michigan paper that going in the wrong direction, that I had shared, and I will, so we have the link tree, that's link.tree, whatever, /Canton NC with all the links to stuff. I will include a link to this paper on that link tree as well. This paper says it's impossible to have an environmentally friendly community center data center. Again, I didn't write this paper, it's from the University of Michigan Science, Technology, and Public Policy Department, so take that for what you will. But I did see, I think your hand, Betsy.
Yeah, there are some data centers in Europe that are totally powered by solar, that are using some form of water that is in a closed loop, that are even buried underground. But the chances of that happening for this project are remote. Not that I don't think we should ever advocate for that. Well, Mr. Eric Spiritus, maybe if you put solar on these sites, maybe you can find a way to recycle the water and imitate what we've done in Norway or Scandinavia. I think that would be the first in the United States. Let me say it like that.
Well, as a European in the room, maybe I can help make it happen.
Okay, I saw Tom, and then I saw a young lady in the middle with glasses and hand up, but we'll do Tom and then we'll come to you.
You raise a great,
Tom first and then we'll come to you, yeah.
you raise a great question. I don't think that's for us to answer. These are very complicated enterprises, a data center operation. As we've already understand, there's so many ways this can negatively impact our community. It's not incumbent upon us to name all of those impacts and develop a law for every one of them. It's for the data center operator to give us guarantees for that. And they're just, from a business standpoint, they're not gonna do that. Microsoft is making a lot of advances in this area, and they have great marketing around it now. And if they or someone else attempts a data center here, they might take a marketing approach and say, hey, look, we're the greenest of the green. And look at all the great things we're doing with solar and all that. But what we find over and over again is they're just words. They never guarantee it. So, to your point, yeah, let's be open to that, but it's up to them to present to us what they're gonna do about it.
And I think this is also why it's important that whatever long-term regulations and limits are put in place need to be based on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable here, right? Like what is acceptable water use, what is acceptable environmental impact, what is acceptable job creation, and then all of those regulations can go in place. And then if a data center says, yeah, we are ready to meet all of your requirements, then possibly there's a future for them. Okay, with the glasses, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of piggyback on both those things that, you know, my community, the environment, the mountains are super important to me, critically important to me, but I'm also a realist to know that we're not gonna stop the train of data centers and AI and everything that comes along with that. And so I completely understand the just kind of knee jerk of like, no, we do not want this, because that's logical. But I also think that if there is a way that we can put in place standards that like, if, like you were saying, if you want a data center here, like these standards have to be met, then we should just potentially be open to like, I would love green space, I would love a riverfront park. Those things cost money to create and money to maintain. So like, is there a way that it could be organized that like your environmental mental impact is minimal to none, and the tax revenue is enough that it warrants you are contributing to the community by allowing us to, you know, have green space or other things that we want. And is your footprint small enough that like there's still enough usable area in the old mill site that it can be redeveloped? Because, you know, at this point I hear a lot of people talk about like, oh, we love cute little river shops or whatever. Like downtown as it is not at capacity. Like where do we really want to also then draw in like another Biltmore Town Center? Like that's not what I want. I don't want a data center necessarily either, but I also don't want a huge shopping complex. So, you know, is there like a give and take where there's something that can make sense from the conversation?
Good point. Okay, there's 3 hands, so we're gonna go in order 1, 2, and then 3. Okay, the one closest to me, and then the one right behind, and then the 5. Yes.
My hand was up for her.
Oh, perfect, okay.
I really need to talk, because I have something that I think people are not aware of. I'm a holistic health practitioner, and I'm trying to piggyback off of some of the comments that have been made about the noise. It's actually not just an irritant. I see this all the time in my practice, people coming to me with like massive nervous system dysregulations, and it does so much damage, this noise. It's not just noise, it's massive amounts of EMFs that a lot of people are very sensitive to. I don't know how far exactly this noise travels, but we have school children here. Like, how is that going to impact their learning? You know, they said they can't regulate noise. I would actually try to fight that. Like, I think we can regulate noise if we have the right people exposing the damage that this noise is doing. It's not just an irritant, it's not just annoying, it's actually very destructive to one's health. So the noise is the biggest thing for me, just because people aren't seeing the huge impacts of just the noise alone, but obviously there's rubber chemicals and all this other stuff that the EPA actually does not regulate the way they should. So there's another, rabbit hole to go down.
Many towns regulate noise.
I was gonna say, as a former bartender who used to have to go outside and measure the decibels of our band to make sure they weren't violating the noise ordinance, I can say that they absolutely can regulate them.
So this is an awesome turnout, and I love it. I don't know how many of you realize that the town of Canton is working on their master plan. And the turnouts are not like this. We need to show up. Everyone needs to be locked in to when those meetings are happening, because we are literally sitting out with the plans, deciding what the zoning is going to be right now. And we can do something about it if we show up. We already know what the consequences are of a data center. We're aware of it. Now we have to do something about it, and that's what we can do.
Yeah.
We need to show up until that mill is down. I mean, it's
All right, so I'm gonna do Vicky and then Dr. Wall, and we'll come to you.
I have had numerous conversations with Eric Spiritas over the past 3 years. And the idea that he keeps coming up with, and think about this, see if you like it or not. I mean, you can hate it. But what he would really, really like to do with that property. How many of you have been to Red Rocks, a big concert venue? Yes. I didn't even hear about it, I don't know what it was. I looked it up, but he wants to call it Green Mountain. And it will be there by the river, have concrete, natural amphitheaters. And so if it does flood again, that it'll just not really be a problem. It would bring in tourists to visit, but not to stay. That's kind of his main vision he keeps going back to. Eric Spiritas, the owner of Two Banks Development. So instead of saying, don't, if you love the idea of a green mountain, let's go say, we love this idea. And that would be a pro way to get on the side of the guy with the power and the guy with the money to say that you really, really want to embrace this community like you say we do your Green Mountain concept. And with that comes a lot of flood control. And he thinks with his plan and what he's doing with his hydrologist that Canton won't have the flooding problem that it does now, the way he's designing it. I mean, and these are words, and this is what he's told the press, and he's put it in print, so, I would like to trust him at his word and encourage him, if you like the Green Mountain concept and the Red Rocks concept, let's put a shout out. Let's do that.
Okay, hey, one favor I have to ask folks, because we are also live streaming, if we can just try and minimize the side conversations, I'm really sorry, y'all. We're gonna do Dr. Wall, one hand here, and then Athena, and then the one in the back.
Well, Kareem, did you want to say something?
Yeah, you had your hand up.
Kareem?
Yeah, I just actually wanted to underscore something you said, which is, this is about creating the breaks and the regulations to ensure that if they wanna build something in town, and I agree with you about having to work at the county level, that they have to seek variances on zoning standards and come back and allow us to have a voice. So we can all talk about what we would prefer in there, and I think that's good to think about those alternatives. But as far as a moratorium and regulation, it's about making sure that the process remains democratic. And the last thing I'll say is, towns don't need to go, and municipalities don't need to offer any kind of tax incentives, because they can afford to pay well beyond market rate. So every farm in our region is vulnerable, because farmers are like not being able to pass on their farms to future generations, and they're looking, this is why you see so much farmland turning into development. So it needs to be like, it's really urgent, that, and so thank you so much for putting this together.
Thank you. Anything else to add? Okay, so then, right here.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on the sound piece that was being talked about earlier. In one of the data centers in Virginia, the local community was essentially not able to sleep because of the sound, and so they approached the data center. The data center raised the pipes that were releasing the sound from the roof. That didn't work, so they put muffles over it. That still didn't work. And they essentially said, well, we're working within the sound ordinance. We're under that, and so we're not gonna do any more. But what the local residents said, they could feel the walls vibrating of their houses, and their windows were shaking and stuff was falling off the walls. And so people were investing tens of thousands of dollars in acoustic insulation to try and stop that, but that still didn't help, and people were just having to leave because their kids couldn't sleep and they couldn't sleep. Even going down to the basements of their house and trying to create a space was still not allowing them to sleep. So if we are going to approach the sound piece, we need to see, like, it's not just the sound, it's the frequency that's actually creating the issue.
That's a great point. Okay, Athena, and then.
Okay, so I have 2 points, and to the healer, I actually moved here a large part from a busy area in Asheville because there was so much sound and I needed to get away from it. I am autistic and I also have autoimmune, and I have noticed since being here, and that's what I love so much about Canton, is it's very quiet, especially at night. I have noticed my actual health and blood work getting better. It is definitely a very real thing, and the sound and the frequencies can really hurt your health, especially at high levels. But also, there have been, at this point in time, I don't know if it's increased since then, there have been at least 22 different towns that have successfully fought off the data centers so far in the United States. So we don't have to give up because it's already happened a lot.
So all of these concerns and regulations and all these limits we're trying to put in, do we have the political support in the city, in the county, in the state? Are there any elections coming up that we need to pay attention to?
There's always elections that are coming up that we need to pay attention to.
What about Mayor Smathers? Is he for or against it? Do we know?
So he has made comments insinuating that he is skeptical of how successful or what the chances might be. Jesse, do you want to say anything about that?
Sure. I do not speak for the town. I don't speak specifically for Mayor Smathers, but I do work with him a whole lot. I'll say a couple of things. One, if there was a perfect world in which data centers could walk out and everyone would be happy, the town would probably consider that. That is not the world we live in. We've listed all the concerns. So they are passing, they more likely than not, like very highly, will pass this moratorium so that they have the time to work on ordinances and work with the county government and probably the state government too on what needs to happen. So the direct question is, we do have political support from our elected officials. I do want to note that they also are going to need y'all's support moving forward. Another thing on elections and stuff, we got county commission elections, we got statewide elections happening. There's a whole vast array of things going on where we can put pressure points on. And I'm sure we're going to get that in the what can we do section.
Well, somebody in this room's running for county commissioner.
Yes. There is someone running for county commissioner in this room. It is Vicki Hyatt. I did promise that there's no political funny business happening here. So if you have questions for Vicki or want to learn more, I invite you to talk with her after the event. But yeah, county commission, so in the town of Canton, I would say that we have a pretty strong foundation of a relationship with our elected officials that we can rely on. That doesn't guarantee anything, but if we leverage that relationship and continue to show up, then certainly we can have some sway. I would say the county has different challenges in the elected officials that are in office there, and so there may be more accountability that is needed. I see two hands. These are going to be the last hands for questions for now. So you right here. Yes.
I work in forestry policy, and I work with a lot of communities out in the western U.S. that have closed their mills and redeveloped them. I have never met a community that has not regretted switching from a land stewardship-based industry to a non-land stewardship-based industry like a call center, data center, Walmart, prison, whatever. It is a really big change in that the paper mill might not have been the most sustainable land stewardship-based industry, but it supported a lot of forestry industry all around this region. And I just really hope that we can think about that as we work towards redevelopment.
Thank you for that perspective. The last hand was in the back.
I kind of wanted to ask for you had talked about how Stu has mentioned like music kind of situation. So does he have it listed and he's trying to get somebody to buy it to do whatever their plan is, or does he, from your relationship with him, have you noticed that he is kind of leaning more towards something that will help the community? Because when I first heard he bought it,
he was planning to do it, he did develop it for that, was my understanding. That's his vision.
because I remember he had mentioned, I think when he first bought it, one of the big interviews, he had talked about how he wanted to do shops and housing and like bring the economy up in Canton itself. And is that something that he still kind of wants, or like how do we?
Well, think of it, if you have, I don't know, thousands of people coming in for a concert on the weekend, I mean, logically, you're gonna need places for them to stay, places for them to eat, places for them to shop when they're not at the concert. So I think that would be like a natural bubbling up of a concert venue.
All right, clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. Okay, so we are at the 12 o'clock mark, which means we have about minutes left together. One thing that I want to emphasize, and this may come off a little woo-woo, but there is some stuff to it, I promise. So I have worked in 2 different outdoor sports arenas before. One, I was a raft guide. The other was snowboarding. And when we are teaching folks to either kayak, raft, in whitewater, whatever, or when we are teaching them to snowboard or go down a very large mountain on a device that is not their own 2 feet, we repeat this rule for both circumstances, which is look where you want to go. Don't look where you don't want to go. So if you stare at the big scary tree or the giant data center, that is exactly where you are going to end up. And there is some scientific basis for this, right? Your body makes micro adjustments to put you in the direction of wherever your attention is. So we definitely want to establish what we don't want, but we don't want to focus and tunnel vision on what we don't want. What we want to focus on is what we do want. And so that is why I actually did want to keep a part of this meeting for a little bit of conversation amongst ourselves to talk about what in social work we call the miracle question, which is, in a perfect world, you wake up tomorrow, none of the capitalism, money stuff, environmental stuff is an issue, you get to do whatever you want, there's no limits, what would we do? What would be on that old property? What would the community get from that property? What would Canton feel like? What would you go downtown and what would your experience be? It is 12 o'clock, so I would like to invite folks to take about the next 5-ish minutes to talk to the people around you about this, to actually start envisioning it, and then we can take 5 or 10 minutes after that to share in a big group if that sounds good. I'll pull us back together. But I actually think this is a really important part of the conversation, because if we don't know what we want, then we can't stop from what we don't want from taking that forward, right? Okay, so take about 5 minutes or so, talk amongst yourselves, do some visioning. What do you want?
I've heard mixed things, but I've been seeing more and more support. Everywhere I've lived before has had access to a greenway, like a bike and walking. I think that would be amazing to have things around. And we also do have access to old unused train tracks on the mill. So I think having some sort of rail and trail system would be really cool. And then ideally, I don't know who this would benefit. I would want an aquarium, but what about you guys?
Who's visited Central Park?
Yeah, honestly, the Greenville part would be so nice right there.
Yeah. I mean, going beyond the Greenway, that's a path along the river. I mean, you can get lost in Central Park. It's amazing. And it's right in the middle of the biggest city in America. So, I don't know.
The Greenville, South Carolina, right?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, they have that beautiful park in the middle of downtown.
And they also have a really good greenway.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the zoo at the end of it. So yeah, there's a zoo within it, and then it's a huge park, and it's also surrounded by businesses, so it benefits the community too. And it also has that outdoor space. I think really honing in on the outdoorness of Canton is more important than
Dogs, we don't have any actual bus system if you don't call in advance. And I've seen a lot of people, especially elderly people, that can't drive or just safe on the road. I feel like we should have some sort of bus opportunity to ask for info. It's not a full station with anything.
I know. There's mountain crawl treks and railroad pathways, so they do and actually, don't involve that. It's not entirely that's why you're using it.
I would not have known that.
I guess but I'm wondering about the space. Like, I love the idea of green space and things like that. This is a big thing about losing the paper mill is losing the jobs. And so, like, how does a space like that provide income and encourage? Yeah, I don't know.
How many, I'm sorry to interrupt, how many acres is that site? It's like pretty significant. Okay.
How many?
It's pretty significant. So I wonder about the jobs, and I wonder like who's going to pay for the green space or like buy that property and clean it all up. If I'm going to, you're going to?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I got it. The amount of money that people will have in their power bills going up on water, I think maybe now is probably less.
Just to say, those are totally valid questions, and I don't know. It is a miracle. Like, you know, what would be the miracle?
Yeah, the miracle I think would be like a mixed use green space. But the reality is probably going to be apartment complexes and retail space at the bottom. Or a data center.
I mean, I think if those are the two choices, it seems like retail and like living space. I mean, it seems like data center is the last thing. The only positive I could think that people would argue that for is that somehow through taxing that, the town is going to get money and that's going to help. But I don't see that happening. I see that they're going to come in, they're going to take, and they're going to make it worse. Yeah, I mean, when I first thought about this space, we were talking about it, it's like, yeah, it would be cool to have like shops and restaurants. We were like, that's just going to take away from the down. Like, do we have enough needs without like destroying the small businesses that are already here? Like, I don't want like a PF Chang's or like a Ruth Chris. I have a question. Before I ask, do you want to submit your miracle?
I am fully into the miracle.
Okay.
There's some that he's already space that we're in right now. She's gonna have the right bar too. So she also has a studio space. And last year she was like, "You guys want to open a green store?" Because it's like it was around retirement, you know. And I split the space in there, and she moved to like a mid-state open up a bakery with me.
We used to let out.
Sell the records. It's really unused. And it's little. So
My question is, there's already a lot of empty commercial space downtown. I don't know what it's like inside, but you could put PF Chang's or a cool new wine bar on the street right there. It's supposed to be opening someday. What's stopping that? What's stopping just the natural development of businesses moving? A lot of people own those businesses and are not willing to give up. Yeah, I mean, is there something we could do on a community level too? Like, or a village level to make that happen? There's a guy who lives down the street from me who, I don't remember, he's like on some kind of local board or whatever. And he said the same thing, and I kind of didn't connect those dots, but in his work, he said we're 4 funerals away from a revitalized downtown. That's not advocating, I disavow, but you know, that's a good point. People holding on. At that point, it would be nice to have to help out.
Again, like we haven't been in this space for that long.
I do think
starting shows and whatnot, like over here, it's just like established, yeah, our feature group. Yeah, so we do plan on like one spring then starting to host things here.
we're ready.
Awesome. I didn't want to cut anybody off mid-sentence with the clapping, so I did a different approach this time. How does that feel, y'all?
Good.
Good. Anyone want to share anything that came up for you? Oh, yes.
We were just having a quick conversation, and I'm definitely by no means professional in this realm. I think this is great to see everybody here. But I have heard different things, rumors about what could happen there, and I didn't grow up here in the mountains. I grew up down east. But this is a precious area up here. And with the mill, it did create a lot of jobs. I know a lot of people that lost their job. And so I think we've all talked about what could bring more jobs or what could be better for the environment. But, obviously the mill has to come down at some point. And so I'm thinking, something simple as just, we are taking the mill down and having a natural space for a period of time. And then, we're thinking about, well, do development here, or build that. It's like, why can't we just have it natural for the local economy and people, and then slowly develop more and more? You walk around downtown Canton and there's so many empty storefronts. I think that should be how we gonna fill these storefronts already here. Why do we need to build something else?
That's a great point. I saw someone I hadn't heard from, I think raised their hand over here. Yes.
As I think Vicki said, we have this huge crowd here. I went to the last master plan session. It was phenomenal. The gentleman running it, they laid out, they talked first, but they laid out maps for us to draw on. What do you want to see? So that's what you're talking about. What do you want to see? How do you want this land used? How do you want to utilize the river? It's so underutilized here. All of our outdoor hiking, rafting, kayaking, utilizing all of that. I encourage all of you to go, because honestly, there were maybe 25 of us. And that was a pretty sad showing for something that, yes, it's a master plan, yes, 30 years out. But you know what? It starts somewhere, and you have to get involved in it if you want it. And you can't complain about this if you're not involved in doing something better for your community. And granted, I haven't been here that long in Canton, but it's my community, and it's my home, and I love it to death. I don't want anything to change that small town feel, but I do think we underutilize what we have around us, from an outdoor perspective. So go online, find out when they are, and please show up.
We'll add those, any links I can find to like master planning sessions and stuff, I'll add to that link tree for the link tree /Canton NC too. So your hand, cover it from you.
So I'm fairly new to the area. We've only been here for about 3 years. Also a new mom. I have heard time and time again from residents that have been here their entire lives that the YMCA was a huge help for the community. A community center, people could go bring their kids, an area, daycare and childcare costs are so expensive. Somewhere where we could go as a community and be with other moms and parents and raising children and raising the community, I think would be a great use.
And we have the spot picked out.
Yeah.
There's a new fire station on Old Camp Road, is that what that's called? North Camp, yeah. There's an old fire station.
Or something more, I know the one was right downtown.
Yeah.
Or, and then where the mill is.
Yeah. Tina?
So I personally, everywhere I lived, there was a greenway, and I really miss it here. I know that's been mixed. I know a lot of people that I've talked to over the past week have been in support of it. A few people against it, but I think that in addition to something like a YMCA, because we have a lot of families here, especially a lot of families with young kids. So having a place for maybe even the elderly, just everyone in general, and especially a place that caters to young kids, because we have a whole generation that's growing up here.
Yeah, and I can say I actually live in Waynesville, but I live off of the Greenway in Waynesville, and one of my favorite things is just being able to like walk out the door and walk down the Greenway next to Richland Creek. It's so nice.
And rails to trails is the thing. We
Mhm.
have a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of railways that connect to the bike park, you know, to Chestnut Mountain. I mean, that's just
a great point.
I think more
Yeah,
green.
Just adding to the children's thing, we had a conversation about having maybe a children's museum or some research-based thing where kids can actually go hang out and do field trips with the schools.
Love that. Yeah, I haven't heard from you.
I just wanted to speak up as I grew up in Asheville, but I now live in Canton, and I think that there's so much exciting stuff about bringing new people into Canton, but I also just want to put this out there that like, one of the things that this place has going for it that like Asheville doesn't so much anymore is the lifelong residents that have been in Haywood County, and they are people who like know somebody that worked at the mill, and it was kind of more of a like quote unquote blue collar situation. And I think that the risk that we run of like bringing outsiders in, which has so many benefits, but it's also like, is there some more sustainable industry or like manufacturing that we could propose and think about? And I'm not the expert on that, but that kind of is like more of an ode to the people that have been there their whole lives and whose like dads worked at the plant and all that. So like I just want to throw that out there as somebody who sees the benefits that like local manufacturing can have.
I'm 76 years old. I was born and raised here. I had 43 years when I retired from the mill. And you mentioned something earlier that I just want to bring to your attention as much as anything else. The mill took a lot of slack, a lot of carrying on. The 1,000 people that here, when they shut this place down, what a lot of people don't understand, I was part of the union for many years. And we tried to figure it out. We did a count. That mill is not just 1,000 people that's over here. Outside of the mill, there was over 4,000 people we counted that wasn't mill employees, but they were employed by the mill, contractors, service providers, one thing and another, over 4,500 people. The train crew itself to service these two mills and take care of, that's the only reason Southern came out here. Hired 125 people. When that shuts, that's 125 people didn't have a job. It wasn't just 1,000 people. It was over 5,000 people was impacted by what happened at the mill. That's that many people that mill fed for years, and families that they fed for years. And I just want to make sure that we understand what we're talking about. We're not just talking about just 1,000 people.
That's right. And that's a really important point to bring up too about like if and going to like sustainable, ethical manufacturing to replace it. Not only will a data center not even come close to the number of jobs that the mill provided, but also there is no, what's the word for it, like that economy, the train wouldn't need to run for the data center. There wouldn't be any
Supporting
distribution.
services.
Yes, exactly. So that's such a good point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Absolutely. Yeah, Carolyn.
I agree so wholeheartedly with what you just said, and the mill did provide like an economic infrastructure that's just not there.
Yeah.
And so when this got posted on Facebook and I saw it, I got so alarmed by people being so hungry for like, yeah, bring in a data center when it's only gonna be like, 100 jobs, maybe, like not even. I don't think that manufacturing has to be big and scary and dirty. I also saw somebody say something about public transit, like a bus station. Somebody said that, I can't remember exactly who. It was you.
Yeah.
But I saw something too about like North Carolina is talking about like a high-speed rail system.
Yeah, they're talking about putting one in from Asheville to
Like,
You were talking about the YMCA, the mill building. Put it over.
yes,
I mean,
I really
that's,
agree.
it can be done the right way. There's a lot of things went on, and I know a lot of people aren't happy with some of the things mill did, but we have state-of-the-art equipment that people don't understand. That the best that we could find to get in here to work, equipment working in that. There was people from other countries came and visited these two mills to see what we were doing, so they could take it back and do it at theirs to improve their doing. So the mill gets a bad rap, you know, and, like I said, after 43 years, it deserves better.
I only have, okay, so we've got 4 hands. These have got to be the last 4 that I see because we are running up on time. So we'll start.
I'll be fast.
Okay.
I was just gonna echo what you said, of the mill being an inspiration to other parts of the world. I would love for our vision of what's to come to be an inspiration for the rest of the world. That's what all things.
Well, one quick point I've noticed, the county is buying a portion of the mill where the warehouse is. That will be under the county control, and they want to bring in some light manufacturing. Because it's where the you remember the distribution center?
Oh, yeah.
That part, all that property over there. And we have full control over how that will be developed. So I just want everybody to be aware of that.
Thank you. Right here.
I just want to honor your contribution in like the historical context, because I think that whatever we want to build has to honor that. And I wanted to give the example of in Memphis there was a mill that closed, and several of the ideas that have been given were like all put together where there's a YMCA, like recreation center. I don't think it's a YMCA, but a recreation center, a museum that's like community contribution museum. There's a high school that's a thriving like charter high school. And then multiple shops within there. So it's honoring, like, they didn't just tear it down, they repurposed it, and to continue to build industry and those multiple industry jobs that are related to that hub. So I think there's examples of like not just throwing it all away and starting over, or like doing one thing, but anyway, the example is there in Memphis.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that. All right, Jesse, last comment.
All right, I'll be remiss if I don't mention that we're talking about regional issues and like local issues and politics. My name's Jesse. I help people navigate through those sort of things and help find positions, elected planning boards, et cetera, both local and long-term, or short-term and long-term for our community and our state. So if you have any questions, if you are new to the area, if you are, on the live stream, et cetera, or if you're from another county around, I'm here, reach out to me.
Thanks, Jesse. Okay, with our last couple of minutes, next steps and what can we do? And I'll answer the last couple of questions, one of which is about next steps. So, number 1, show up to the public hearing and voice your support for the moratorium as the very first step, not the last step, not anywhere close to the last step. Very first step. The public hearing is this upcoming Wednesday, the 11th, at 6 p.m. at 85 Summer Street here in Canton. That information is also linked on the link tree. Again, linktree/CantonNC. Second thing, after the public hearing, follow up, continue to stay involved, make sure that further regulations such as zoning and land use restrictions are put in place, along with legislation to prevent non-disclosure agreements, secrecy regarding public subsidies, etc., and so on. I will make sure that I start adding the links to the master plan meetings, that kind of stuff, to the link tree, so that link tree can just be the place where people can find the things that they need for this. This is also true not just for our county and the town of Canton, to follow up with them, but also follow up on the state level, right? Continue to follow up, to look up, keep going up and up and up, and see how we can get our government to protect us from abuses and exploitative practices. And then the third thing is to sign up to receive updates following the public hearing and future meetings of importance. So if you want to receive updates from us, this group of people who put this together, then there is a sign up sheet. Make sure that you drop your email on that. I will also, I don't have one yet, but I'll create a virtual sign-up sheet for folks who are like on the live stream or not here in person, so that y'all can sign up to receive updates as well. And that'll probably go up sometime later today. And then where to watch, how to share the recording of this meeting. So yes, this meeting was live streamed by Athena on Athena's YouTube channel. You can click on, so that Linktree again, Linktree/CantonNC, there is a link on there to the YouTube channel. So that live stream will automatically, I think, upload as a recording.
Yeah, it'll take about like an hour, 2 hours depending, but it should be up by like this evening.
Perfect. So you can share that recording out. That said, we decided, because there were so many people that have Sunday things that they have to do on Sundays, that we are doing a virtual teach-in on Tuesday night. So if there are folks who could not be here or didn't find the live stream accessible for whatever reasons, they can join us virtually on Tuesday. It will be interactive, so it won't just be like a live stream session, it'll be like this was. And that information is also on the Linktree. We are asking folks to sign up. They have to just fill out a form with an email address so we can send them the meeting info. They can't just like go in and join the meeting with a link, okay? And that's just to make sure that like the folks who are coming in are actual local people, like, and not, you know, some corporate person trying to figure out what's going on.
Is that like a Zoom?
It'll be like a Zoom. I use a platform, it's called Jitsi. It's just open source software, but it works just like Zoom. You don't have to download anything. You can just go onto the internet and join the meeting through your internet browser. Great question. Yes.
I was having trouble pulling up the Linktree. So is it Linktree?
Where's my marker at? I'll write it up here. Okay, so it is linktr.ee. So instead of .com, linktr.ee/Canton NC.
That's an important link. That has access to resources, the live stream, and lots of other things.
I'll show you what it looks like right here too.
Okay, I found it.
So it's literally just a list of links. So the first one on here is the information about the public hearing. Second one was about today. The third one is the live stream / recording. Fourth is Tuesday. And then the fifth one is the little write-up that we did leading up to today. So we'll add more to this list. We'll take away old stuff, and this link will stay the same so you can find what you need on here. All right, it's 12:27. Any last urgent questions before I let y'all go?
Not a question, but just an invitation on what we just did of sitting and visioning of what we want to see there. I would love to see people go home and draw a picture of what they want to see and ask their kids to draw a picture and to get that on something you can see daily to visualize what we want to be there.
Love that.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Yeah.